So the guitar player for Reagan Youth, Paul Cripple, just recently passed away from a very long battle with cancer. And it just got me thinking, and I kind of dove back into their music a little bit. And they didn't have a really broad catalog or anything. They weren't around for a super long time. Well, they've been around for a while, but they didn't record an absolute ton of music or anything. I think they had a couple of records worth of music. But they're one of these bands that when I was young, I used to really enjoy their imagery and their stance politically, things like that. I like their music, but I didn't know a lot about them, and it just never really occurred to me until this happened that maybe I should learn a little bit about the band. So I jumped up on the internet, started typing things in, and here's some information I found out about Reagan Youth. I'm going to read it off to you. I'll probably put some imagery up on the screen at some point, but I don't know, man. Let's learn together. Let's keep these bands alive. Let's keep their message alive. Let's not forget about them. They're still relevant. Reagan Youth, oddly enough, is probably as relevant today as it ever has been, especially based on what their band was formed because of, like where they stood, what they stood for. That stuff is just as relevant now, if not more, than it was in 1980. So, without further ado, let's talk about Reagan Youth for a minute. And before I get there, please, if you're enjoying this content and you're enjoying my channel, please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 7,000 and then 10,000 subscribers after that. Please like the videos and drop comments down there. That really helps a lot. It really, really does. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you want to support that way, that'd be amazing. I'd appreciate it. Further support, you can do that on Patreon or check out my Discog store or whatever. If you want, if you have questions about any of that, let me know. I'll help you out. And you can always reach out to me if you need to talk to somebody. My Instagram is also in the description. So yeah, let's keep it pushing, man. I don't mean to sit here and advertise for myself. We're here to talk about Reagan Youth, man. So they were an anarcho-punk band from Queens, New York, who started in 1980 by singer Dave Insurgent and the guitarist Paul Cripple, R.I.P. Those friends went to Forest Hills High School. That's the same place that the Ramones went whenever they formed their band. Speaking about Reagan Youth, when they formed their band, they went to Forest Hills High School. Originally calling the band Puss, they changed their name to Reagan Youth shortly before playing their first show on August 22nd of 1980. Reagan Youth quickly gained a following and were soon playing the punk clubs of Manhattan. One of their physics teachers shaved his head at CBGB's one night, and then after that, he became associated with the band. He was taking their equipment around in his Dodge Dart. I find that absolutely amazing. The fact that they went to the same high school as the Ramones is really cool, but the fact that one of their teachers liked them and appreciated what they were doing enough to like shave his head and be like, I'm one of you guys. I think that's awesome. Helped carry their equipment around in his car. I don't know, man. I think that's pretty awesome. After they graduated, they released their first record. It was a 7-song youth anthems for the New Order EP. They began touring nationally on that record, and they were regulars at the Sunday afternoon hardcore matinee shows that were held at CBGB's in New York. The band toured throughout the early 1980s, but by 1984, right before going out on the road, they started to have drama within the band. Then there were some member changes. Unfortunately, that was pretty common within this particular group. Al Pike, their bassist, even went on to play with Sam Hain with Glenn Danzig after splitting up with Reagan Youth. As far as I understand it, and I think that still holds true today, with a lot of these bands, punk, hardcore, even metal bands, there's a lot of energy within the members of these groups, and sometimes they split up. I find that a lot of cities that have really, really amazing musicians, those musicians are in like multiple different bands. So you'll hear like one city will have 5 awesome bands pop up at once, and you'll figure out, oh, there's like 2 dudes that are in all those bands. I think that's how it was back in the 80s with Reagan Youth as well. By the late 1980s, the extensive touring had taken its toll on the group. Despite the many shows played and the relatively large album sales for a hardcore punk band, they continually found themselves broke. I mean, that's kind of the way it is for punk, I guess, huh? I think the 90s were kind of a one-time thing, honestly. It was interesting when it happened. I don't think it was going to last. It sure hasn't, as far as I can tell, which is a good thing. I think money, breeds a lot of stuff we don't want in punk rock, honestly. At least, large giant amounts of it. Making a living is one thing, but being rich and famous doesn't really gel too well with punk, in my personal opinion, for the most part. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, I guess, right? After Ronald Reagan left office in 1989, the band split up. Despite their decision to disband, the group attracted the attention of the growing punk rock label New Red Archives, with whom they had signed a 2-album deal. New Red Archives first re released Youth Anthems for the New World Order with 3 additional outtakes as a Volume 1. In 1990, a few of the original members got together and recorded a Volume 2, but their discography is kind of confusing, honestly. I know they just had a song that came out this year, 2024, called Rocks Off. Decent enough song, but like all bands from this era, I find myself seeing some of the same songs on multiple releases, on comps, what do they call those things? Anthology releases, things like that. I don't actually know a ton about their discography. So if anybody has that information at the ready and you want to leave it in a comment, I'll happily pin it because I'd like to know more about what is it that we should be picking up from this band. Is there particular records that we need to be buying from Reagan Youth? I've always listened to them kind of on like mixtapes. I don't know that I've owned much of their stuff. Maybe a CD or two over the years, but yeah, with those early 80s bands, there was a lot of re-releasing of the same material through different labels, and it is what it is. That doesn't bother me much, but it does confuse the hell out of me. So uh, in 1998, New Red Archives released a Live and Rare, a CD compiling highlights from the New York City area, Reagan Youth sets from the early 1980s, along with tracks from the band's initial demo and a brief demo for Volume 2. Pike and New Red Archives owner Nicky Garrett, also the guitarist for the British punk band UK Subs, contributed liner notes for this release. In 2002, plans for a reunion at CBGB featuring Bakija, Brian, and Bonet were shattered by Brian's sudden fatal heart attack. RIP. That's, dude, health stuff can come out of absolutely nowhere, man. It's absolutely terrifying. Oh, man. As I get older, I just think, man, do what you can while you can because you never really know. You know what I'm saying? For the last 20 plus years, there have been a number of iterations of the group playing shows and touring, but not a lot of new music has been recorded. Drug addiction, members passing on, others becoming ill, have made it rather hard for the band to become and stay consistent since their initial run in the early 1980s. The most recent lineup of Reagan Youth consisted of Scott Sturgeon, aka Stizza from Choking Victim, Leftover Crack, Star Fucking Hipsters, on vocals. Paul Cripple played a few shows with that lineup. Following the return of his cancer and the decline in his health, the band stopped touring and they focused on recording new material. And then Paul passed away from the cancer on September 21st of this year, 2024. Reagan Youth is an aggressively anarchist, socialist, and anti-racist band. They often utilized KKK and Nazi party imagery for satirical effect. In their original 1980s incarnation, they sought to address the parallels between the policies of Ronald Reagan, the Christian right, and American conservatism, and the beliefs of the hate groups, which, I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. I think that all is relevant today as much as it was back then. Their self titled song, Reagan Youth, uses a tongue in cheek rhetoric to draw parallels between young Republicans who rallied to the cause of Ronald Reagan and the Hitler Youth of Nazi Germany, ushering in an era of songs about Ronald Reagan and American punk music. Yeah, I mean, punk rock's always kind of been like that. At least there's been like two factions of punk. There's the rebellious, just I want to do what I want punk, and then I think the political punk. And they often bleed and blend together, I think. But there are definitely two sections of punk, but this kind of punk is, I don't know. I think you need one to have the other, and vice versa. But that's just my opinion. Sometimes I don't want politics in my punk, and sometimes I do. It just depends on the day, I guess. The band expressed its left wing politics through irony, using images from hate groups for their albums and CD covers. I think that's funny. I was at a punk rock museum guided tour from Krista Makes of Less Than Jake, and he didn't understand the irony in some of their imagery. And I think he even commented, yeah, I guess it was okay to use these images in the 80s. It's not now. And I literally was just shocked when he said that. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. It just was surprising to hear him say that. I think I caught it in the video. It's up on my channel somewhere. If you want to see him point that out, I'm pretty certain that's what he said. But Musically, the band was firmly rooted in early hardcore and punk rock crossover as far as their sound. Uh, they moved deeper into waters uncharted by their punk rock contemporaries as their career progressed. While their 1983 debut is an accomplished work squarely in the keeping with hardcore punk convention, their 1990 follow up, which is crazy, it took 10 years, features dense guitar work full of guitar solos, overdubs, diversified tempos, and several sonic experiments, leading it to draw comparisons to Black Sabbath and 1970s album oriented rock. I think that's very weird. I don't even know that I've heard that record, to be quite honest with you. When I think of Reagan Youth, I almost exclusively think of them as the early 80s sound. And they don't have a ton of music out there. I think it's one of those bands that they did a lot with a little, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like Operation Ivy. Maybe not quite to that degree, I guess, but where they only had a small amount of music released, yet they affected so many people and it did so much. But I don't know. I just wanted to talk about them for a minute, put them out in the limelight. I feel sad for the friends and family of Paul Cripple. And I know that I read a post where he said that he didn't want people to cry over him and he wanted people to continue to live and be happy. And I totally understand that. I want the same for my friends and family when I go. But it does matter to me that he was here. It does matter that he made this music. And I don't know. I'm going through a lot of personal stuff right now. And I'm doing this to kind of try to help pull me out of funk, if that makes any sense. So, this channel means a lot to me. This community means even more. So I'm just trying to do what I can to stay healthy up here, to shine a light on some people that I think are incredibly important, and to entertain you guys. So I hope I did a good enough job. I feel a little bit like maybe I didn't, but I'm working towards some things. I got some other stuff in the works, and yeah, man, we're going to continue to grow this channel, get people on it to podcast and talk and interview, and hopefully do some really cool video essay stuff in the very near future. I'm working on one from a French band that robbed millions of dollars. It's going to be a pretty crazy story. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time on the Punk Rock Review. All right, peace.